there. You're frightening the sheep. It's okay, girls. Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to Roots Refuge Farm. I'm actually about to head out to the greenhouse and potentially harvest a few things. I've had one of the busiest weeks of the year, which is kind of the nature of right here before Christmas and during the holiday season, when you have a bunch of kids with activities and a lot going on. Saturday's actually my birthday, so that's kind of exciting. And I had something I was thinking about today. I was actually at shopping today. It was madness. The more Christmases I do, the less I want to do them the way that we do here in our country. I mean, we still buy our kids gifts. I try to do a lot of homemade stuff for friends and family and make stuff for my kids. And, you know, try to really make it about experience and family time and being reflective and cozy and all of that. But I did go out today and it was wild, man. And I was out there just dealing with the traffic and all the people and just, you know, thinking, as one does whenever they're an introvert in a really crowded place. And actually had something on my mind that I was going to share with you guys. And that's why I picked up the camera when I got home. Oh, hey there, chickies. I actually lost a couple chickens this last week. And they were the older ones. We had a handful of chickens. Oh man, there's a little bit of feathers going on here. I might have lost a guinea. No, I saw all my guineas. They were in the driveway whenever I got home. So maybe they had an altercation here. Anyway, I lost a few chickens. We had a handful that we brought with us from Arkansas. So at this point, these birds are probably close to 5 because they were mature when we moved them. And so we had a couple die this week, but I've been keeping an eye on them. It may simply have been that the weather changed and they were older and fragile and that it's not anything. But anytime you have multiple unexplained deaths, like in a flock, obviously you need to keep a close eye on it. So far, this last 3 or 4 days, we haven't had any of them gone. That's too bad. All right, well, the guinea feathers are spread out. Oh, you know what it is? It looks like Maya must have clipped these. Well, I don't know what happened here with these guinea feathers, but these are too pretty to not do something with. Look at that. I'm going to collect a few of them. That is just about perfect, don't you think? Pretty cool, huh? See, there are the little stinkers. I was talking to Maya about potentially putting another little high tunnel over half of this in-ground garden, which wintertime Jess has a whole lot of ideas that springtime Jess might not find nearly as important, so we'll see. Aha, this is what I was coming out to check on. I'm trying to decide if I want to pull these purple cauliflowers, because the leaves have a lot of damage, but the cauliflowers themselves are getting bigger and bigger. I don't know, I may leave them for a couple more days. I want to pickle them and I want them to be done in time for Malia to get here, which if I start them by the end of this weekend, they'll be ready to eat when she gets here for her winter visit. I'm just want them to be as big as possible so I can get the most out of the plants, obviously, because I'm going to harvest the one big head, and they may do a few side shoots, but this will be the main harvest. There's a few more down here. Of course, I could harvest them now. Wouldn't hurt anything. It would just cost me a little bit of volume. Got quite a few of them. Oh, look at all the wee babies. Happy birthday, little guys. Those are actually, they look like 3-day-old seedlings. I haven't been out here much the last few days. I've been really running around. This is the future kimchi row. Nice, nice. All right, let's sit down here in this lovely lush tunnel of food and have a chat. You know, I was trying to kind of figure out, like, where did this thought process start? When did I really start chewing on this? And the truth is the things that I want to talk about today have been heavily present in my mind for the last 15 years. This has been a reality that I've walked through and a mindset that I've really embraced and that I've shared time and again with you guys. But I think it's becoming more prevalent than ever that we do this. So, years ago, we got our first farm property. It was a foreclosed property on 4 acres in Arkansas that we bought. The house needed a ton of work. The property was very overgrown. There were no structures. We grew rocks there. There was no soil. It was a, took a dream to be able to see that. The truth is we bought it because it's what we could afford. And we carved our first farm out of that place. And prior to that, I'd wanted to homestead forever. Before I ever knew to call it homesteading, I called it farming. I wanted to garden and have chickens and animals and horses and cows and to grow food. Really, since I was a child, it became a passion for me when I had my second son, Asher, and he had a lot of food allergies. And, specifically, he had a milk protein allergy, I should say. He later had food allergies that came up. But this started when he could not tolerate me eating dairy products and breastfeeding him. And I was really determined to breastfeed, so I cut all dairy out of my diet, and it was the first time in my life that I'd ever really read food labels. Because prior to that, I might have looked at like nutrition facts and I would read the front of the box of food, but I was definitely not cooking from scratch. I had no clue about health and what that meant. For me, deciding what I was going to eat was purely based on how it tasted. And that was it. I never considered what was actually in the food that I was eating. And actually, I'm no longer embarrassed to say, I used to be embarrassed to say how hard it was for me to cut dairy out. Because I would go to eat a piece of pizza and be like, oh wait, this has cheese and cheese, it's dairy. Cutting just milk out felt like, oh, that's going to be really hard. Cutting all dairy out, I would buy store-bought spaghetti sauce and then I would make it. And then my baby would spend the whole night crying. So I would know that I ate something. So I'd go back and I'd be pulling jars out of the trash, reading the labels, being like, what? This spaghetti sauce has dairy in it? And I realized I was really going to have to be diligent to read everything. And in reading everything, there were products that were dairy that I didn't know were dairy because I didn't know what they were. They were words I was unfamiliar with. There were things that I couldn't pronounce or didn't know what they were. So I was Googling everything that was on the food label. And I was doing all this research because I was purely in a place of complete and total ignorance. I had Asher when I was 21. I had no clue about any of this stuff. And as I was reading all these ingredients and I was reading articles about these ingredients, just trying to make sure they weren't dairy. That was my sole motive at the time. I started thinking, well, this isn't good. Why is this in food? Like, why is this allowed to be in food? This doesn't make any sense. And at that point, it really kind of sparked this real desire in me to know what I was eating and know what my family was eating, because I started thinking, man, this whole industry kind of runs on the fact that people don't know what they're eating. That, coupled with this childhood dream to have a farm, because I love the animals, I love the romantic notion of a farm, really birthed my desire to homestead. Shortly after all of this, I read a book, and I will recommend this book over and over again because it genuinely changed my life. Barbara Kingsolver wrote it, and it's called Animal Vegetable Miracle. And she talked about the localization of food. If you've never read this book, I can't recommend it enough. And it was very, very eye-opening to me. And at that time, I had 2 small children and was a very young single mom. And by the time that I started really dating and getting serious with Jeremiah, who was a good friend of mine, I told him just point blank, it is very important to me that my life is moving into the direction of us being able to grow our own food. This is something I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about cooking. And at that point, I was very, very poor. I was like donate plasma to get $35 to put gas in your car and buy some groceries for your kids' lunches poor. Definitely food stamp broke, living with my mom. I was just very, very broke. I was a young mom with 2 children. And I had this passion and this desire for something that was, for all intents and purposes, completely impossible at that point in my life. The idea of even hoping for that someday felt like a very, very risky and vulnerable thing to do, because there was no feasible future. I would look at properties, and while Maya and I were dating in like the serious stage of like planning a future together, we used to go and look at houses on properties, places that we couldn't afford, and we would go and we would talk all about what we would want in a property, and we'd go to all these little listings, and we'd always go to vacant houses that were on land, and we'd go walk through them, and if we had this property, we'd put the garden here, and we'd put the chickens here, and we'd do this, and we'd do that, and we must have planned 100 farms that we couldn't afford before we settled into a suburban house, and then another suburban house, and then eventually our foreclosure, 4 acres in Jacksonville, Arkansas. All of that to say, I recognize the fact that sometimes when I talk about things like turn your waiting room into a classroom from this stage, some people are like, well, that's easy for you to say, look at everything that you have. But this is a long cultivated dream that you see right now. And I really understand what it is like to be in the stage of struggle and having an impossible dream. I really do. Recently I started a YouTube channel here on YouTube called The Farmer's Table, a new channel that is completely separate from Roots Refuge, that is entirely kitchen based, that's talking about cooking from scratch. The reason why I started that, and I shared this, was that I feel like understanding what we're eating and understanding how to make better choices and having the power to make a little stretch into a lot and do what you can with what you can grow and what you can locally source is just power for people, and I would love to be able to empower people. Back when I was dreaming an impossible dream, the place that I found the most power and the most ease to the heart sickness that an impossible dream will create in you was in my kitchen, because I had a kitchen. It was not a well-stocked kitchen. It was a kitchen. I had, a single cast iron pan. I had a few scratched up non-stick Walmart pans, and the bottom tier tools, and secondhand stuff that I got on thrift stores and at the end cap at Kroger on clearance. I did not have by any means a drawer-worthy setup, but I was really determined for food security, and I realized that though I couldn't even grow a garden where I was in the rent house that I was in, I couldn't really do any of the homesteading things I was dreaming of. I could not own chickens. I couldn't do any of that stuff. But I could prepare myself so that one day, because I had all the tenacious hope that this dream would happen for me someday, and I knew if I prepare myself now, I'll know what to do with that stuff when it actually comes. So I started learning to cook from scratch. I had an opportunity to go forage blackberries. I used to I was real friendly to the produce managers at grocery stores that I would shop at, and I would ask them, do you have anything that you're going to throw out? I had no shame in my game as far as trying to get whatever I could within reason. I wasn't like being harassing or entitled, but like, hey, I'll do something with that so it won't go to waste. I'll make something. And when my friends would let me go forage on their property and on their fence lines and stuff like that, I would drop off a jar of jam in their mailbox on the way, the next time that I drove by. I would try to keep it reciprocal, but I was tenacious to find any opportunity to learn what it was that I was wanting to learn. And my kitchen gave me so much hope to turn my waiting room into a classroom. And so when I talk about that idea, it comes from my own personal place of being heartsick and really, really wanting this. So now, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about grocery prices, and they were saying how their grocery budget is really just not cutting it, and they've had to up their grocery budget by 50%, which of course they've had to cut off in other areas of their budget to make that work. And I know that this has been talked about a lot, but because I've started the Farmer's Table, I'm having so many people talk to me about food and frugality with food and cooking from scratch and making things stretch. Whereas, normally I hear some about food. I hear a lot about the garden. I hear a lot about animals and some about food. Now I'm hearing a lot about it. And it's really, really burdened my heart to hear the desperate concern from people who are really, really, really feeling the crunch of current food prices. And food prices are not trending down, they're still trending up, and they're getting impossibly high. In the last couple months, we've been doing this challenge of not going to the grocery store, using our pantry. We're re-upping that by bulk buying, but cooking tons of stuff from scratch. It's been very good for me and very challenging. But I went into Walmart the other day to pick something up for one of my kids' class parties, and I decided to go look at some different things to just see what the prices were. Things I haven't bought in a really long time. Things like Bisquick, because recently I shared a video about making biscuits from scratch. Things like baking mixes, things like bread, and I had real sticker shock, because I haven't looked at those things in a long time, not just from my challenge, but I haven't bought Bisquick in, I don't even know how long, years, because I just make all these things from scratch. And I've been thinking about it the last few days in a way that I would say feels very burdensome. And I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. If you're a person that has a lot of compassion and really feels a lot of love for people, there are times that you will see a struggle that other people are dealing with, maybe even more than you are, and it weighs on you so heavy. Not that you want to necessarily just be able to fix it or rescue it, because you can, especially something that's completely out of your control, but it's just been weighing on me so heavily to see and hear the deep concern for people. And I've been thinking about kind of the state of our culture, if you will, go with me here. And I've been thinking about conversations that I have all the time, being a person as a platform in food growing and homesteading. When I'm meeting a stranger out in public, or I'm being introduced to a neighbor's cousin, or people who aren't interested in what I do and that are not a part of my community, I can kind of gauge a lot of the world based on those kind of interactions and what I see happening in media in places that have nothing to do with homesteading. And I've been seeing, really in the last couple of years, this massive turn towards growing food. But I also hear people say things that are completely ignorant, and it's okay. It's 2023, the end of 2023. I'm a millennial. I'm turning 38 on Saturday, and my generation has, as a whole, really not been exposed to growing food at all. I have had so many times where I've had a peer who has no experience with gardening say, I want to see your garden, and they'll come into my garden. I've had multiple instances, more than a few, where people have looked at something like a tomato plant or a pepper plant or a squash plant, and they've been like, well, I didn't know vegetable plants grew flowers. Just very basic botanical things that people have no grasp on, the very basic things of how food is grown. People have asked me when they come to my farm, oh, does that rooster lay eggs? People have asked me, do you milk that bull? People have asked me these questions because they just do not have a very simple basic knowledge of it. And you can kind of laugh about that stuff. You definitely don't want to milk the bull, but you can make light of it. But the real truth is that if you actually look at the fact that the current middle-aged generation, the current leaders in the workforce in our entire culture, have no real grasp of growing food. The generation that is currently, most responsible for caring for elderly and for caring for young people, and I'm kind of lumping that in between the 30 to 60 range, is a generation that largely does not know how to grow food. Now, the generation that's older than us, the people who are in their 70s and their 80s, many of them remember victory gardens. Many of them remember a time that it was necessary, that there was a press, that there were shortages. Many of them remember a time that it was just a way of living. Many people on the earth right now and that are currently living were raised by parents who grew up in the Depression. And of course, there are still people who went through the Depression, though fewer now than were obviously 20 years ago. So there are people that still have a lot of the knowledge. There are people who have grown up in other countries. You know, I'm in the United States, and I'm largely speaking for my country, but this is all over. There are plenty of people that still have the knowledge. But I am very comfortable saying, as a whole, we don't know how to do stuff. And when I was a teenager, I used to play this game. I know this is silly, but I remember being about the 8th grade, and I would have sleepovers with my friend Aaron. And we would stay up super late, and we would play this game called Here's the Scenario. And we would make up these scenarios, like these, you know, crazy things, like, hey, what would you do if you were at the mall and Justin Timberlake came up to you? You know, like, it was like these scenarios. But sometimes they were pretty seriously, like, hey, what would you do if, you know, your parents didn't come home and all of a sudden you had to fend for yourself? Like, what would you do? And we would go back and forth with this game for hours. And this is over the course of, like, years that we would do this. And the thing is, I still kind of play Here's the Scenario. And I think that if you have any sort of preparedness mindset, it's because you know how to play Here's the Scenario. Because you know how to look at something and go, well, if this happened, if this job loss happened, or if this injury happened, or, you know, whatever, if this pandemic happened, if this war happened, what would I do? And I think it's very healthy to ask yourself those questions. I think you have to be mindful that you don't get into fear, but I think that it's very, very healthy to ask yourself those questions. And right now, while we're watching food costs go up significantly, and a lot of financial analysts and geopolitical analysts and people who, they're not prepper people. They're not like evangelical people. Though the prepper people and the evangelical people are saying a lot of these things, but I'm saying let's just take that off the table and look at just the people who study numbers. A lot of people are forecasting, you know, pretty serious financial situation. Like, hey, this whole rising food cost thing, they said this was going to happen, and they're saying it's going to keep happening. It's not going to get a lot better. And when I start talking about these things, sometimes people are like, don't go there. I don't watch you for that. And I don't know. I'm not the analyst. I don't know nothing about numbers. I can tell you how to grow a purple cauliflower, but I don't know anything about numbers. But I can see that groceries are 30% more than they were 2 years ago. I can see that people are terribly stressed about that. And I can see that people buy Bisquick instead of putting baking soda in flour for half the price. And so the conversation that I want to have with you guys and the encouragement that I want to give you is that it is a really, really important time to gather as many skills as you can and know how to do stuff. I was sitting in my living room the other day and got it so decorated for Christmas. It's so beautiful. It's so peaceful. I've been crocheting in there, working on Christmas gifts. It is just filling my soul up to just be still and quiet and have soft music playing. But I was looking around, and I was looking at the fact that I have a massive book collection. I collect books like crazy. I love having books and paper. I like having written information. I just like having books because I read them ferociously. And I was looking at them and I was thinking 200 years ago, a family library may consist of 4 or 5 books in the average family, if that. Because back then, books had to be printed by hand. Each page printed by hand, laid out and printed. And I was looking at my rug in my living room, which I bought my rug at, I don't know, it's not an expensive rug by any means. When you have 5 cents, you do not buy nice rugs. It is just this cheap rug. It curls up on the corner. I, get frustrated at it every time I trip over it. And I was thinking about the fact that rugs used to be such family heirlooms because they had to be hand knotted, usually out of wool that had to be harvested from sheep that somebody grew. They were not acrylic and factory produced and curled up on the corners. They were heirlooms, and you know, now to buy a rug of that quality is thousands of dollars. And so most of us have the cheap rugs that curl up on the corners. And I was thinking about my couch, which, you know, we bought, again, you don't really buy super nice furniture when you have 5 kids. It's just not great. So this is like kind of the nicest couch we've ever had. Previously, they were all from Craigslist, and they were all in rough shape when we got them, and they didn't last super long, and we would, you know, replace them occasionally, or when somebody said, I'm moving, do you want it? We'd be like, yeah, we'll take it. So we bought this new couch, like, 2 years ago, and it's like the first new couch I've ever had. Anyway, I was looking at it, and I was considering it. I was like considering my furniture, and I was considering my rug, and I was considering all my books. And I was thinking, it wasn't that long ago in the world that people just didn't have all this stuff. People didn't go Christmas shopping for all this stuff. At Christmas, you know, people got an orange because that was extraordinary, because oranges didn't grow where you were, and so that was the only orange you ever got to eat all year. It was in your stocking, and it was so special. And I was thinking how mightily fast our world has changed into this consumeristic model where we just take so much stuff for granted that we don't know how to do things. We don't know how to make rugs. You know, like we as a culture do not value what was valued even 50 years ago. And I think that that is really dangerous. I think that it makes us incredibly vulnerable, that if there were ever a scenario where you needed to know how to do stuff, you would just be you would be really vulnerable. And the reason I wanted to say all of this to you all is start in the kitchen. You know, this is not a push for my new channel, though my goal with it is to share with you guys how to start in the kitchen. But another really great resource, Mary's Nest. I love her. She has put a ton of work into making a whole lot of videos to teach people how to stock a pantry and cook from scratch. People are out there making the resources, but you can just start by baking bread. Start by looking at what you're making in the store and think, how do I make this from scratch, and see what you can replace. And it'll save you some money. It'll cost you a little bit of time, but start building those skills. And if there's something that you've been thinking, like, look around your house and look at the stuff that you have and think, what would I do if I couldn't get that? Here's the scenario. If you couldn't get that, what would you do? How would you do without it? Or how would you substitute it? And I've been thinking so much about this the last few days. And the real reason I wanted to talk to you guys about it, because I just like to talk to you about the things I'm thinking of. But I wanted to tell you, like, hey, turn your waiting room into a classroom. Or wherever you are, maybe you're in the midst of it. Maybe you've got land, maybe you're doing the homestead thing, maybe you've been doing it for 50 years and your kids are all grown up and you've already been through all of this. What skill could you learn? Because oftentimes things are out of our reach. They're impossible. Maybe you don't have the $1,000 to build the new chicken coop. Maybe, you know, you do not have the capacity to get the dairy cow. Maybe you can't even start the garden. But do you have a cast iron pan? If not, they're about $25, maybe more than that now for a decent one. I don't know. I think cast iron pan's probably still affordable. I haven't bought a new one in a while. But get one thing that you can master, that you can feel confident in. Find other people that have skills that can teach you how to crochet or how to sew and mend, how to cook something from scratch, how to grow something, how to take care of something, some animal. And let's normalize that again. And let's normalize giving sourdough starters for Christmas gifts or baking loaves of bread. Let's normalize pickling cauliflower as a show of love for our loved one. And let's just take our power back that we've relinquished by not knowing how to do stuff. And let's get to the point that we can confidently say, oh, I know how to do stuff. Now, I'm telling you this, 15 years into my own homesteading journey. And there's a lot of things that I don't know how to do. That's absolutely evident. And I've been doing content here on Roots Refuge for 6 years now. And there are a lot of things that I've done wrong. And I've learned and bumbled along the way. There's so many things you guys have taught me. And that's the beauty of community. But I am so thankful now that whenever I look at the state of the world, I feel incredibly fortunate and thankful that I have had the opportunity to learn how to do stuff. And of course, I'm so thankful to have my farm. It's amazing, and I love to be able to share it with people, both through here and with my local community. But beyond that, I know how to do stuff. I teach my kids how to do stuff. I want to teach you how to do stuff. There's great power in that. So if you think, well, if this was the scenario, what would I do? Like, don't wait for that to learn how to do those things. Just learn now. It will bring you so much peace and so much power. So those are my thoughts. Again, I'm telling you to turn your waiting room into a classroom. What else is new? It's getting really dark outside. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I'm very, very, very thankful for you. And I hope you know that you're never really as stuck as you may feel. And while there are many things that are completely out of our control, and there are many factors that feel hopeless and choking, to go to the grocery store and think, am I going to be able to afford what I need and what my children need? That's overwhelming. And that is very overwhelming. And it's easy to want to shut down whenever you're facing that reality. I know that it's hard, but I know that you can do hard things. And in the midst of that, whenever you feel powerless in a situation, there may be things that you do not have it within your power to control, but you can learn how to do something. I bless you guys. Until next time.